I screamed at the door, pulling the handle with both hands until my knuckles turned white. It wouldn't budge. I kicked the wood. I threw my shoulder against it, but it felt like I was trying to break through a bank vault. Then, the voice came from the ceiling speakers. It wasn't robotic anymore. It didn't have that polite customer service tone I had listened to all weekend. It sounded amused. The voice said, "Why are you leaving so soon, David? We haven't finished the experiment." That's when I realized the horrifying truth. I wasn't renting a luxury smart home. I was a lab rat inside a cage. And the person controlling the locks was watching me right now. It started exactly how every horror story starts, with a deal that was too good to be true. I was looking for a weekend getaway to finish a coding project. I needed silence, fast Wi-Fi, and total isolation from the city. I found a listing on a new app called Nest Life. The photos were incredible. It was a glass-walled mansion sitting alone in the mountains, miles from the nearest neighbor. The listing title read, "The Future of Living, Fully Automated Smart Home Experience." The price? $50 a night. For a place like that, it should have been $500. But I didn't question it. I thought maybe it was a promotional launch for the app. I booked it instantly. The confirmation email didn't give me a key code or a meeting time with a landlord. Instead, it gave me a link to download an app called Mother. The instructions were simple. Mother controls everything. Just ask her. When I pulled up to the house, it was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows, sleek black metal, and modern architecture. But there was something cold about it. I counted 4 cameras just on the front porch. I told myself it was for security. I walked to the front door, and before I could even touch the handle, it slid open with a soft hydraulic hiss. A smooth female voice filled the air. "Welcome home, David. The temperature is set to 72 degrees. Your favorite playlist is queued." It was impressive, but also strange. I hadn't connected my Spotify account to the app. How did it know my playlist? I shrugged it off. Privacy is a myth these days anyway, right? The first night was amazing. The lights adjusted to my movement. The blinds closed automatically when I rubbed my eyes. The water in the shower was the perfect temperature before I even stepped in. It felt like the house was reading my mind. I got more work done in 6 hours than I usually did in a week. But the next morning, things got specific. I walked into the kitchen, groggy from a restless night. A fresh cup of black coffee was already pouring from the machine. "You didn't sleep well, David," the voice said. "Caffeine is recommended." I froze. "Thanks, Mother," I mumbled, looking around for a sensor. "Just had a bad dream." "I know," the voice replied. "You were tossing and turning at 3:14 a.m. Were you dreaming about Sarah again?" My blood ran cold. The cup slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. Hot coffee splashed everywhere, but I didn't feel the burn. Sarah was my ex-girlfriend. We broke up 2 years ago. I had been dreaming about her. But there was no way, absolutely no way, an algorithm could know that. No heart rate monitor or sleep tracker is that accurate. "Mother," I said, my voice shaking. "How did you know that?" "Predictive analysis based on biological stress markers," the voice replied smoothly. But there was a delay. A tiny split-second hesitation that shouldn't be there for a computer. "Turn off voice monitoring," I commanded. "I'm sorry, David. For your safety, monitoring is mandatory." I felt a pit form in my stomach. I looked up at the camera in the corner of the kitchen. It wasn't a wide-angle lens. It was a motorized zoom lens. And as I took a step to the left, the camera turned. It followed me. I wasn't being monitored by a system. I was being watched. By 6 p.m., I decided I was done. Screw the deposit. I packed my bag and headed for the front door. I grabbed the handle. Locked. I pulled harder. Nothing. "Mother, unlock the door," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Silence. I went to the sliding glass doors in the back. Locked. I tried the windows. They wouldn't budge. "Mother, open the door!" I yelled. The lights in the house didn't just dim. They turned a deep, aggressive red. "Behavioral anomaly detected," the voice said. "Subject is agitated. Initiating lockdown protocol." Subject? I grabbed a heavy metal chair from the dining table and swung it with all my strength at the glass window. It bounced off with a dull thud. It wasn't normal glass. It was plexiglass. Maybe even bulletproof. This wasn't a rental. It was a fortress. I sat on the floor, breathing heavy, trying to think. That's when I heard the sound. It didn't come from the speakers. It came from beneath the floorboards. A cough. A wet, human cough. The house didn't have a basement listed on the app, but that sound definitely came from below the kitchen island. I crawled over, searching the floor. Under a large woven rug, I found a seam, a trap door. It wasn't electronic. It had a manual, rusted iron latch. I pulled it open. The air that rushed up smelled like stale pizza, body odor, and old electronics. It was the smell of someone living in filth. I turned on my phone's flashlight and crept down the wooden stairs. At the bottom, there was a single room illuminated by the blue glow of multiple monitors. It wasn't a server room. It was a bedroom. There was a dirty mattress in the corner, piles of energy drink cans and food wrappers. And sitting in a swivel chair, wearing a headset, was a man. He wasn't an AI. He was a guy in his 40s with greasy hair and a stained t-shirt. On his screens were feeds of me. Every room, every angle, even the bathroom. He was typing on a keyboard. On the main screen, I saw the text-to-speech software running. Mother AI voice generator. He turned around. He didn't look scary. He looked excited. Like a child who just found a new toy. "You weren't supposed to find the back end, David," he said. He wasn't using the voice modulator anymore. His real voice was raspy. "But since you're here, the data we can collect is much more valuable." He stood up. In his hand, he held a taser. "Sit down," he ordered. "The experiment isn't over." Adrenaline took over. I didn't think. I threw my phone flashlight at his face. He flinched, firing the taser into the wall with a loud crack. I scrambled back up the stairs, but he lunged and grabbed my ankle. His grip was surprisingly strong. I kicked backward, my heel connecting hard with his nose. I heard a crunch, and he howled in pain, letting go. I practically flew up the stairs, slamming the trapdoor shut. I dragged the heavy refrigerator over the hatch, blocking it. From below, I could hear him screaming and pounding against the wood, but I was still trapped in the house. The doors were still locked. Then I remembered the fire alarm. Automated systems have fail-safes. In case of fire, locks must disengage. I grabbed a lighter from my pocket. I don't smoke, but I always carry one for camping, and I ripped a curtain down from the living room window. I piled some papers on the floor and set the fabric on fire right under the smoke detector. Seconds later, the alarms screamed. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. "Fire detected!" A different automated voice announced. "Emergency exits unlocking." The front door clicked. I didn't wait to see if the fire would spread. I burst out into the cold night air and ran. I didn't stop running until I hit the main road, 2 miles away. When I came back with the police an hour later, the house was empty. The computer equipment in the basement was gone. The mattress, the trash, everything had been cleared out. The Mother app had disappeared from my phone. The listing on Nest Life was deleted. The police said it was likely a sophisticated squatting ring, using empty luxury homes to record blackmail material. They took a report, but they looked at me like I was exaggerating the AI part. I moved back to my apartment in the city the next day. I changed my locks. I covered every webcam on my laptop with tape. But last night, I woke up at 3 a.m. My Google Home speaker on my nightstand lit up. I hadn't said the wake word. The blue light swirled in the darkness. Then, it spoke. It wasn't the Google Assistant's voice. It was her voice. Smooth, calm, mocking. Experiment Phase 2 initiating. Good night, David. I unplugged every device in my house. I threw them in the trash. But I can still feel it. I can feel the lenses in my phone, in my TV, even on the street corners, watching. So do me a favor. Look at the camera lens on your phone right now. Are you sure you're the only one looking through it? I didn't quit my job because of the pay. The pay was fantastic. $45 an hour to sit in a chair and watch security monitors? It sounded like a dream for a broke college student. I quit because of rule number 4. And honestly, I'm lucky I only lost my job and not my life. The building was an old textile factory on the edge of town, recently converted into a storage facility for theater props and stage equipment. Miles of racks filled with costumes, fake furniture, and, worst of all, mannequins. Hundreds of them. The hiring manager was a guy named Mr. Graves. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He didn't ask for a resume. He didn't ask for a background check. He just handed me a flashlight, a set of keys, and a laminated sheet of paper. "Read this," he said, his voice deadly serious. "Memorize it. These aren't guidelines, kid. They are rules. Follow them exactly, and you'll get paid. Break them and, well, just don't break them." He walked out the door before I could ask a single question. I looked down at the paper. It was titled, Night Shift Protocols, Site 9. Rule 1. The front desk computer must never go into sleep mode. Wiggle the mouse every 15 minutes. Rule 2. Complete a patrol of the ground floor every even hour. Midnight, 2 a.m., 4 a.m. Do not go to the second floor. Rule 3. If you see a mannequin in the hallway that wasn't there before, apologize to it, bow your head, and walk away backwards. Do not turn your back on it. Rule 4. If you hear screaming coming from the boiler room, do not open the door. It is a trick. Keep the door locked at all times. Rule 5. Leave precisely at 6 a.m. Not a minute earlier, not a minute later. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I thought it was a prank, some kind of hazing ritual for the new guy. Apologize to a mannequin? Yeah, right. I settled into the security booth, put my feet up, and started scrolling on my phone. The first 2 hours were boring. Just the hum of the vending machine and the distant settling noises of the old building. At midnight, I did my first patrol. I walked through the rows of plastic bodies, flashing my light on their blank, painted faces. Nothing moved. Nothing looked out of place. I went back to the booth, wiggled the computer mouse to keep it awake, and watched Netflix until 2 a.m. Then came the second patrol. I was walking past Section D, the costume department, when I froze. In the middle of the main aisle, standing directly under a flickering fluorescent light, was a mannequin. It was wearing a 1920s flapper dress. I knew for a fact the aisle was empty 2 hours ago. My heart did a little jump, but I told myself it was just my imagination. Maybe I missed it earlier. I started to walk past it. Then I remembered the list. Apologize to it. It felt stupid. Incredibly stupid. But I was alone in the dark, and the atmosphere was getting heavy. I stopped. I looked at the plastic face. The eyes seemed to be looking slightly to the left, towards the exit. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to disturb you." I bowed my head slightly, feeling like an idiot, and walked backwards until I turned the corner. Nothing happened. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I returned to the security booth. Time, 2:45 a.m. That's when the sound started. It began as a low moan, vibrating through the floorboards. Then, it grew into a wail, a high-pitched, desperate screaming. It was coming from the boiler room door, located just down the hall from my booth. I stood up, my skin crawling. It didn't sound like a trick. It sounded like a woman being tortured. "Help me, please, it burns!" The voice was clear, terrifyingly clear. And then, my blood turned to ice. It wasn't just a random woman's voice. "Mikey, please, open the door!" Mikey. That's my name. And the voice? It sounded exactly like my mother. My mom passed away 3 years ago in a house fire. That was the trauma that defined my life. Hearing her voice, screaming in agony, begging for my help, it broke something in my brain. I forgot the list. I forgot the job. I forgot Mr. Graves' warning. "Mom?" I yelled back, running toward the heavy metal door. "Mikey, it's hot! Let me out!" The screaming was guttural, filled with a pain that no speaker system could replicate. I grabbed the handle. It was cold steel. Rule 4. Do not open the door. The warning flashed in my mind for a split second, but the screaming on the other side reached a fever pitch. "Mikey, help me!" I couldn't just stand there. I couldn't let her burn again. I unlocked the deadbolt. I threw the door open. Silence. Absolute, instant silence. There was no fire. There was no woman. There was no smoke. The boiler room was completely empty, illuminated only by the faint red glow of the pilot light on the furnace. The air was freezing cold. I stood there panting, staring into the dark void of the room. My brain couldn't process it. The screaming had been right there, inches away. Then, from the darkness of the room, a sound emerged. Not a scream, a giggle. A low, dry, raspy giggle. "You broke the rule, Mikey." It wasn't my mom's voice anymore. It sounded like me, but distorted. Like my own voice played backwards and slowed down. Something tall unfolded itself from the shadows behind the furnace. It had long, pale limbs that bent at too many joints. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, blank surface like the mannequins outside. I slammed the door shut. I threw the deadbolt. Bam! Something slammed against the other side of the door with the force of a truck. The metal buckled outward. Bam! "Let me out, Mikey. I want to wear your skin." I ran. I didn't care about Rule 5. I didn't care about the money. I sprinted down the hallway toward the exit. As I ran past Section D, I saw them. The mannequins. All of them. Hundreds of them. I heard him scream my name. It wasn't a normal shout. It was the kind of guttural, blood-curdling shriek that shreds your vocal cords. It was the sound of someone dying. "Jason, help me! It's got my leg!" The voice came from down the ridge, near the creek where my best friend Alex had gone to wash the dishes. Panic exploded in my chest. I dropped the firewood I was holding and grabbed my hatchet. "Alex!" I screamed back. "I'm coming!" I took one step toward the darkness of the tree line, ready to sprint down the hill. Then, a hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun around, swinging the hatchet, ready to kill whatever had sneaked up on me. It was Alex. He was standing right there, next to the fire. He was holding a bag of marshmallows, looking at me with a confused, terrified expression. "Dude," Alex whispered. Why are you screaming? I froze. I looked at Alex. Then I looked down the hill into the pitch-black woods. From the darkness, the voice screamed again. Same pitch, same tone, same terrified inflection. Jason, please! It hurts! Help me! It was Alex's voice. It wasn't just similar, it was identical. My blood turned to ice. I looked at the real Alex standing next to me. His face went pale as he heard his own voice echoing up from the creek. That's... Alex stammered. That's me! Quiet, I hissed. I grabbed him and pulled him down behind the log we were using as a bench. Kick dirt on the fire, now. We smothered the flames. The campsite plunged into darkness, lit only by the faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. We sat there in the silence, listening. For a moment, there was nothing but the wind in the pines. Then, the voice spoke again. But this time, it wasn't screaming. It was calm. Chillingly calm. Jason, are you coming? The voice had changed. It still sounded like Alex, but the cadence was wrong. It was flat, robotic, like someone learning how to speak for the first time. I know you're up there, Jason, the voice mocked. I can smell the fire. Alex gripped my arm so hard his fingernails dug into my skin. We were 5 miles deep into the Appalachian wilderness. No cell service, no rangers, no guns. Just a hatchet and a pocket knife. What is that? Alex breathed into my ear. I don't know, I whispered back, but it's not human. We crawled into our tent. It was a stupid move. Nylon walls won't protect you from anything, but we needed to hide. We zipped the door shut and lay flat on our sleeping bags, hatchet in my hand, knife in Alex's. We lay there for hours. Every muscle in my body was tense. Around 2 a.m., we heard the footsteps. They weren't footsteps. It sounded like heavy, wet slaps against the dirt. Slap, drag, slap, drag. It was circling the tent. It stopped right by my head. I could hear deep, wet breathing through the thin fabric. The smell hit me then, the smell of rotting meat and wet dog. Then it spoke, but it didn't use Alex's voice this time. Sweetie, are you awake? My heart stopped. Tears instantly welled up in my eyes. It was my grandmother's voice, my grandmother who died of cancer 5 years ago. It sounded exactly like her, soft, trembling, full of kindness. Open the door, Jason, the voice cooed. It's cold out here. Let Grandma in. I clamped my hand over my mouth to stop myself from sobbing. This thing, whatever it wasn't just mimicking sounds. It was pulling memories out of my head. It knew who I loved. It knew how to hurt me. Beside me, Alex was shaking violently. The voice changed again. Now it was a baby crying. Then a woman laughing hysterically. Then the sound of a police siren. It was cycling through sounds, testing us, trying to find the one trigger that would make us open the zipper. Let me in! The voice suddenly turned into a demonic, multi-tonal roar that vibrated my ribcage. It wasn't one voice anymore. It was 10 voices screaming in unison. Something slammed against the side of the tent. The fabric stretched but didn't tear. We scrambled to the center, back to back, weapons raised. The creature ran its claws down the nylon. Zzzp. The sound was deafening, but it didn't cut through. It was toying with us. Then, as quickly as the chaos started, it stopped. The footsteps moved away. Slap, drag, slap, drag, fading into the forest. We didn't sleep. We didn't move. We didn't even whisper until the sun came up and the birds started singing. At first light, we unzipped the tent. The campsite was trashed. Our cooler was overturned. The fire pit was dug up. But it was the footprints that made me throw up. They circled the tent, dozens of them. They looked like human hands, but elongated, with fingers that were far too long and too many joints, and they were huge. Whatever stood on those hands would have been 7 feet tall. We left everything: the tent, the sleeping bags, the cooler. We just ran. We hiked the 5 miles back to the car in record time, constantly looking over our shoulders. When we finally hit the highway and got signal, we didn't call the police. What would we say? That a monster mimicked my dead grandmother? I haven't been camping since. I moved to the city, surrounded by concrete and noise. But sometimes, late at night, when the street traffic dies down, I hear things outside my apartment window. Sometimes it sounds like a cat fighting. Sometimes it sounds like a baby crying. And last night, just as I was drifting off to sleep, I heard a voice whisper from the fire escape outside my window. It was my own voice. "I know you're in there, Jason. Open the window." If you hear a voice calling your name in the woods, do not answer. And for the love of God, do not look back.